Welcome to Forbes Entertainment. Joining me now is Rob LaFranco, Assistant Managing Editor here at Forbes. Rob, thank you so much for joining me.
Good to be back, Brittany. How you doing?
Good, always a pleasure to have you. There has been a lot of entertainment news over the past week, so let's break it all down. Starting with the shakeup at Disney, tell us about it.
Yeah, no business like show business. This was a brutal ride for Bob Chapek. It was just a debacle, to be quite honest. I don't think I've seen anything like this in 30 years of covering. I mean, there's been a lot of dramatic executive upheavals. Disney has been at the core of many of them. I don't know if anyone remembers the Cats and Mouse lawsuit, which Forbes covered heavily back in the 90s when Jeffrey Katzenberg was fighting to lead the company. But yeah, Bob Chapek, it was unexpected when Bob Iger left. No one actually believed that he left. There was one analyst who called the Disney Iger relationship as codependent. Iger, even in the early days when Chapek took over, was sort of behind the scenes. Everyone knew that he was kind of making decisions and leaking things to the press. And it just has been a disaster for Disney financially since Chapek took over.
Can you explain that? How has Chapek's tenure been this rocky ride? What challenges has he faced?
Well, he took over during the pandemic, which of course is not going to be easy for anybody, especially if you're running cruises and cruise ships and theme parks. He also took over at a time when media was in major transition. Everybody moving from cable television, broadcast television over to streaming, which has been traumatic for everybody. So he had to manage that. And he's a guy. I've never interviewed him. I have met Bob Iger. Bob Iger is very charming. He's loved by the creative community in Hollywood. He's a schmoozer. He's a politician. He's very smooth. And Bob Chapek apparently is not. He's kind of a bean counter. He ran the theme parks. He's an operating guy. It appears that doesn't actually go over so well in Hollywood. And that biggest flaw that came out in the battle with Scarlett Johansson over the salary of Black Widow, which more than anything shocked Hollywood because of how that went down. Actors, top tier directors, they're practically royalty. They're untouchable in Hollywood, and he went to war with one of them, and that was just unacceptable for the community.
Got it. But back in June, Disney's board voted unanimously to extend Bob Chapek's another 3 years in a move that was seen as the company backing him amid all this turmoil. So what happened between June and now?
Yeah, a curiosity for sure. No one's really gotten the story there. I mean, I suppose this you could cynically look at it, or maybe the Disney board was being generous and decided, well, this guy's been a loyal employee for so long, so we're going to give him a solid. We'll have to pay out his contract, but we're doomed here. I mean, that earnings report that came out was just a disaster because the streaming division, which was booming under Bob Iger in terms of subscription growth, it lost a ton of money. And Disney is expected to spend $33 billion on content. So it's not like that's looking like it's going to turn positive anytime soon. People in Hollywood have been grumbling that Bob Chapek wasn't the right guy. The structure he put in place wasn't the right structure. All of the content had to be funneled through his chosen executives. And, you could say this wasn't a surprise, but at the same time, it was a total shock. So exactly what went down in the boardroom between that decision to re-up his contract and today is unknown, but it's Hollywood, so I don't think it will be a secret for too long.
Yeah, that's show business. But is this ultimately a black mark on Bob Iger's career because he's the one who picked Bob Chapek?
Yeah. Yeah, Iger, look, Iger had a tremendous run at Disney, and, he purchased Marvel, he purchased Pixar, he purchased Star Wars, he purchased Fox. And yes, he picked Bob Chapek. Bob Chapek was his chosen successor. Don't know why. People were surprised when he chose. Everyone thought it was going to be Kevin Feige. Yeah, and Iger, saddled. He's coming back to a company who's probably happy to leave. He is a company that's saddled with debt. All of the big acquisitions had been made, and it's the biggest entertainment company in the world. But some people actually say, well, it's not big enough. It needs to be bigger so it could go up against Netflix and Apple. So he's got not an easy road ahead of him.
It sounds like an uphill climb for sure, but do you think Bob Iger can turn it around?
Um, yeah, I mean, he's very accomplished executive, and like I said, he's very charming. He's very smooth. He's not going to get into the battles that Chapek got into, like the one he got into in Florida or the one he got into with CAA and Scarlett Johansson. You know, Marvel hasn't. Marvel is one of Disney's big properties, and it hasn't had a big opening. It hasn't had an opening for a Marvel film in China since Chapek took over. You know, Iger's the kind of he was expected to go into politics, maybe run for mayor. You know, be going. Everyone was thinking maybe someday Iger for president. You know, he's a political animal. He loves that game, and he's a schmoozer. He's a charmer. So maybe that will be one of his first tasks is to get Marvel back and Disney back into China. But you know, if anyone can turn around, it's him. There are questions of whether he might just try and sell the company, which who would you sell it to? Apple is always the name that comes up, but it's a massive purchase even for Apple. Or how he's going to turn things around here. You know, and she has to choose a successor. That's his, you know, that's he's got 2 years to do this, and he's got to do a better job of choosing a successor than he did the first time around.
I'm definitely interested in seeing who that successor is, but how did Disney's stock respond to the news?
It popped when it was announced, but remember it was 156 or so, over 150 when Iger stepped down and Chapek took over. It immediately fell down to 86, 85 or so. It hit that low point again in November. It's now back up to 96. It's got a long way to go before it gets back to Iger's heyday. I mean, this is a headache for Bob Iger. This isn't going to be the glory days that he had in the late 10 years of his tenure.
He has 2 years, so I'm anxious to see how he turns it around. But I do now want to talk about the Taylor Swift ticket debacle that happened recently. Fans had a really tough time getting tickets to her new Eras stadium tour. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, this is another brutal battle. You know, Ticketmaster's for decades, for 3 decades. You know, it was created by a lawyer, ex-lawyer, a guy named Fred Rosen, who in the mid 1990s, Forbes wrote about this a lot. He was one of the most hated men in the entertainment business, if not in pop culture.
Why?
You know, well, because Ticketmaster essentially had a monopoly on ticket sales. Now those were the days when you had to go to a Tower Records or somewhere and line up because the Ticketmaster outlet was in the back of the store, and that was the problem then. It was a brilliant idea. What was happening then is you had all of these arenas and stadiums, and they had no expertise in selling tickets. So the idea was, we'll create an infrastructure, we'll create the software, and we'll sell it to the arena. So it really was solving a major problem. And every arena, just about every state, everyone who had to sell tickets to the public said, we don't want to build this software ourselves, we're going to go to Ticketmaster. Well, they created a monopoly. And then came the $13 ticket fees and the Pearl Jam fiasco. Remember, Pearl Jam went after them in the early 2000s. I mean, they have been a hated gatekeeper for live events since it was created 30 years ago. And this was a surprise because it was a technological failure. And that one we really hadn't seen with Ticketmaster.
Yeah, the Swifties really came out full force in their outrage over this whole fiasco. But Ticketmaster responded, and they said that the demand was, quote, historically unprecedented. Do you think that's an adequate excuse here?
I don't. I mean, look, Taylor Swift, you don't really get a bigger name in music right now. You know, she hasn't been on the road for 4 years, going on 5. And the last time she did hit the road, I think it was 3 million people that showed up to see her. You know, she's re-recorded her old albums. All of them were massive hits. Then she puts out a new album, a massive hit. You know, 10 of the top. Like, if you couldn't see this coming, you're living under the biggest rock in Hollywood. Like, it's you knew this was going to break the internet, and they've got it's Live Nation. They've got the resources to beef up the bandwidth they need to support this kind of thing. Obviously, they didn't. It's inexplicable why that there weren't fail safes put in place.
Even because they offered pre-sale to verified fans, so they should have been able to easily gauge, what the demand was going to be here.
You would have thought they had data to suggest just, wow, okay, we thought we would sell 150,000 of these in the first 10 minutes. We just sold 600. Oh, we better get our IT guys on the phone and get some more phone lines blinking here. No, it's again, I call it the Ticketmaster curse. It really, this company has, I mean, it's an amazing business when you think about it. They have a monopoly in ticket sales, so and no one else did that. You got to give them credit. But the way they handle these things is just, it's a tragedy from era to era. It's like, it started in the days of Guns N' Roses, and now we're in the era of Taylor Swift, and they're still hated by everybody. It's just amazing.
Do you think the blame here solely lies on Ticketmaster?
uh, I can't see where you would put any other blame, to be honest.
Yeah, and Taylor Swift did kind of give us this nugget in her response, and she said she hoped to, quote, provide more opportunities to those who couldn't get tickets, quote, for us to get together and sing these songs. So how likely do you think it is that she's going to add some more shows?
uh she, Likely she'll do something to address this. She understands just how loyal and dedicated and fanatical her fans are, so she will do what she can. But it's only so much she can do. She can't actually take in ticketing on her own. Like, it's not something that band management or record label is set up to do. So she's going to have to deal with third party partners, and right now that third party is basically Ticketmaster. And it's also exhausting to be on the road and playing to 60,000, 50,000, 30,000 people every night wherever you're playing. You can't just extend that and I'll add 3 more months to the tour. It's a major toll on any artist. So there'll be a remedy. I know that Taylor Swift will do something to soothe her fans. Exactly what that is remains to be seen.
Well, speaking of other tickets, let's recap the weekend box office. It was week 2 for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. How did it perform?
Solid. Dominated the box office again. Wasn't a whole lot of competition to take it on. They thought there might be, with a couple of movies coming out, the She Said movie about Harvey Weinstein and The Menu. But it dominated. It's now about 550 worldwide. Everyone is now watching, and it's on pace to certainly crack 1 billion worldwide. That's probably expected at this point. Will it surpass the 1.5 or so that the original did in 2018? Not looking like it will, but it's possible. Maverick had kind of a slow start compared to where it ended up at 2 billion. It was definitely $1 billion movie when it came out the gate, but no one, I don't know if no one expected, but it surpassed expectations. Wakanda seems to be holding on. It's, again, as we talked about last week, it's going into a season where there's a lot of tough movies coming out. But by then, pretty much its history will have been written. Its final dollar sign will be known by the time Avatar hits theaters.
You said that you thought there was going to be some competition, but I don't think it came to fruition. What flopped this weekend?
Well, She Said is the big one. And the movie gets rave reviews, and the topic, Harvey Weinstein's, criminal activities, are, it's timely. It's very much in the headlines. So to me, it's not so much a reflection of the movie. It's a reflection back on kind of the thing that the headache Bob Iger has, which is there are movies that people want to go to the theater to see, and Wakanda is obviously one of them. Black Adam, to a lesser extent, that was a content problem that it didn't really smash it. Avatar is one that people are going to watch in the movies. Movies like She Said, where it's a heavy theme, and it's kind of inside baseball, and it's the kind of thing you probably want to watch streaming at home. And that's the talk right now is, will they, salvage the bruises that they faced in the box office with a smart and strategic streaming debut? When do you do that? Do you do it over a holiday period? This might have been a great weekend to do it. People are sitting around Thursday, Friday afternoon. What should we do? You're not going to go to the movies to watch She Said. You will watch Fableman or Wakanda, but you probably would maybe decide to stream it. But that's not the case.
Is there a streaming strategy at all for this movie, or is that yet to be seen?
Yet to be seen. I'm sure they're working on it, thinking about it furiously and debating how to do it. But again, it's, that's the way the entertainment business is shaking out, at least the movie business. The theatrical business has not quite found its footing in the streaming age. And everyone sort of knows there are movie theater movies and there are TV movies, and the release strategy is going to have to sort of reflect that.
Well, Rob LaFranco, thank you so much.
You're welcome. See you next week.
See ya.